So, in the third part, we will speak about your further future, about your research methods, and you must be aware, this is my main message. Your research method must fit to your planned outcomes, to your post-research questions. So, the question is, why do we do research? It is because in Western society we believe in causality. For example, Eastern thinking is not so strong in this opinion, but in Europe we say that our achievements have been done because we believe that there are causes and there are consequences. So, you have to study to find something new. You have to study what cause leads to what consequence. So what depends on what? Because sometimes it's unclear. Sometimes it's so complex and so circulated that you may not be certain. So that's why you have to specify both. I believe that this cause results in this consequence. And but it may not be valid always. It may hold only on certain conditions. So another issue, another research question is, when does it hold? Under what conditions? Where? What must happen to cause this consequence? How? This is very specific for humanities. In physics, the relation is often 100% valid. So when A happens, B will follow. But this is not true in humanities, in business administration as well. So we have to find with what probability, under what conditions it may happen. And why? This is very important, basic question. What is behind this cause-consequence relationship? Now we are trying, for example, using big data analysis to find these reasons in society. Because with small numbers of data, we may not find those relations, but with huge amounts of data, it may not become clearer. So, as I mentioned, causality in science is practically deterministic, which means that when there is enough water, sun, the plants will grow. And if not, it's very unlikely. Then we start studying what the cause. But in business and management and in humanities, as I said, it is not fully deterministic. It may happen, it may not. So your client may decide buy your product one day and not doing this another day. And sometimes there is a reason behind it, sometimes not. Sometimes simply random choice. So we have two ways of thinking about following those causalities. One is called positivism and the other one is called constructivism. There are plenty others details, but for getting this basic picture, these two are enough. Positivism presumes that everything is logical, it can be expressed by mathematics, and so on and so on. That's why many research paper contains formula, because we would like to describe them. This is very positivistic way of thinking. And it presumes that knowledge is objective. It is here and it is even existing beyond our existence. And also, the other belief, which is a bit strange, because I'm not positivist, I'm something between, I'm more constructivist than positivist. There is omnipotent theory covering everything. So if we would find this theory, we could predict everything, which is, as we businessmen believe, is far from truth. And naturally, if there are in a positive sense, we know that there are some discrepancies. It doesn't work always, but the reason is quite obvious. It's either faulty research method, because we didn't use the right research method to prove it, or we have not perfect devices to solve the problem. There are errors in our measurements, and that's why the results conclusions are not correct as well. Which is not the point of view of constructivism, and I am more for constructivism than for positivism. It says, scientific knowledge is something which is constructed by scientists, which also means that knowledge is subjective. If we will not study a subject, we will not find the results. Yeah? But those results that do not exist if we don't find them. And there is no single valid methodology, rather a diversity of useful methods. So we are approaching, I believe there is something like absolute truth, but we are tackling it and trying to get to it as close as possible. There is a table which I will not demonstrate. You will find it in my slides, and it shows those differences between them in detail. They speak about description, explanation of this method, prediction, which means prediction, validity or power of prediction, and finally the control, how we control that the results are right. If I would speak about how they work, so positivism is more or less top-down method. So we have hypotheses and we drill down to find its proof. While constructivism is working from bottom and going up and believing, okay, we will have a set of data and we try to generalize them and find what they mean. Naturally, and you can see it very easily here in this case, none of those methods is absolute. You have to combine them and find in what moment which of those will function. Positivism says that we have to collect facts about the reality, while constructivism says we create the reality because we know data and we try to generalize and then say, okay, this is a reality because we can prove it. So, there are two main ways to research, and they are quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis. Quantitative analysis is, I would say, positivist approach. It's not fully true, but it's pretty close to that. How do we proceed? First, we make a hypothesis and we try to find its verification. Verification means that we are trying to respond yes or no. To do so, we need mass samples. That's why now these big data are so popular, because they allow us to use much bigger samples than we have used to in the past. And we believe, and we try to distinguish between two groups of those data. One we called independent variables, which in fact means, and this is not a very unfortunate title, but it's like that. In principle, it means that we see these values as causes, and dependent variables, oh, sorry, there is a mistake, those are the consequences. Sorry. I will fix it in my slides. And naturally, we are here collecting explicit knowledge, something which can be expressed by final results or some formulas. And we do it using statistical evaluations or some mathematical models. This is probably the most preferred way how mathematicians influenced the economics. And we are trying to find something we call adequate representation of the universe. Prичем universe again means population or business relationships and stuff like that. Yeah? So we are trying to describe our world as something which is a relationship between causes and consequences. Then we do qualitative analysis, which is more constructivist approach, which is different. We have small samples of data or people or whatever, but they are aimed, they are selected, they are intentionally. You see, that's why if you look back here, those mass samples mean that we take everyone in a sort of random way, and we believe that from this big random set we can find those proportions, those conclusions. Another very important method is so-called qualitative analysis. There is a big difference between those two methods, because this one works with much smaller samples. But those samples are not random as before in those big masses. Here they are aimed, which means that you intentionally select subject of your research and you study it. What you do are certain case studies, so you select a situation and analyze it, or pilot research, which means you implement something new to a sort of artificial environment and follow what will happen. And it gives us a quick orientation results. So we cannot say this is valid everywhere, but it says, it seems to me, and that's why the method is subjective, it seems to me that it works in this way. Which means this method itself is more oriented to tacit knowledge, give us a series of considerations, material to be thought. And in fact, this qualitative analysis leads to forming research questions, hypotheses and stuff like that, which will later be used in quantitative analysis and proved. Again, there are two tables showing the difference between qualitative and quantitative research, and shows you why these methods are applied and when. So this is a sort of recommendation under which situation you can use each of them. What to say in the end? We have to be aware that both of these methods are important and useful, and both have their limits. Because, for example, quantitative analysis is very general and it has statistical value, which means that it cannot say anything about the particular case. It can say about probability in which this particular case will evolve in this or this way. And luckily, both they relate to tacit and explicit knowledge, but in different ways. And which means that you have to think, and again, depending which way of thinking you prefer, either very proved and exact or intuitive, you may orient your research to. If you are a very exact person, select quantitative approach. If you love creation, novelty, innovativeness, then it's better to go to qualitative research and stress on it. Please don't work with only one. As I said, both are useful, but you can make your preference. And if I may say, this is such a sort of trick. Quantitative method is presumed to be more scientific. So if you wanna make a good application for defense, for dissertation, you should use at least partially quantitative data. Because when people look at formulas and see some big numbers, many numbers, they love the process more than if it is just sort of talkative. Despite the fact that both can be full of good results. So this is my advice to very, very far end of your work. And this is the end of the third video.